Splatoon 2. It's literally Splatoon 2.0. Like most sequels in video games, they are often similar to the original. Most often, they ought to have some polished mechanics from the original. We've seen plenty of games where this works, some where they don't. But in this case, with Splatoon 2, it's an odd duck. It's very similar to the original Splatoon, to the point where it's too similar to the original. Sure, there are tweaks made to this to set it apart, but when I say it's Splatoon 2.0, it's a comment that's very on the nose. So here, in this review, I'm hoping to pick apart what the inner workings of this game are like. First, I think it'd be prudent to take a look at the similarities between the game and the original Splatoon. When you first open the game, you are given a chance to design the cosmetics of your Inkling you'd like to use in the game. You can select the gender, eye color, skin tone, and change them at your leisure. But there is one thing that you can do here that you couldn't do in the original. You get to choose your leg wear! Oh my god, you can choose your pants! We did it, everyone! Interchangeable leg wear is a thing in Splatoon! Oh. It's just cosmetic. And you can also choose from one of 4 hairstyles. Are they hairstyles? I guess, although they may not be hair. But since I'm a responsible young adult, I'll go with the ink hair being short. Not only that, but when you take care of that, you are taken into some training grounds just like in the original, where you go over more or less the things you'll need to know to win in turf wars, just like the original. And once you're done with that, you are sent to Inkopolis, where you run into these two. Okay, I know that the single-player part of this game involves the original Squid Sisters, but these two wannabes just don't have the same charm as the Squid Sisters. Sure, Pearl has the uppity and peppity demeanor like Callie has, and Marina has a laid-back personality just like Marie, but when I first saw them, I could only think, who are these has-beens? Sure, they may have some humorous lines between the two, but I just like the Squid Sisters more in this scenario. And the reason why I think they have some funny things to say sometimes? Because just like in the original, you cannot skip this. Do I really need to know where I'm going for turf wars? Sure, ranked battles and league battles and what you'll be doing is knowledge you'll want, but there's still no skip function here. Irritating. Then there are these shops. Not much different except the headgear shop is run by Flo, a slug who dresses like a homeless person in San Francisco, along with Crawmond, who isn't a dick like Mo, so that's nice. And the footwear shop is run by a spider crab named Bisk. Spider crabs suck. Krusty Sean appears in this game, but he runs a business running a food truck that sells legalized cannibalism. My flesh! It burns! They give you boosts for experience, money, and certain abilities as well, which does help. And how do you get these experience, money, and ability boosters? You exchange tickets. Okay. Doesn't make good business sense, but whatever. And as for the abilities, they have been changed as well. Some of the abilities like quick respawn have been tweaked. Damage up and defense up are ostensibly not in this game, which is probably a good change considering that many people in ranked mode in the original abused the damage up abilities and the E leaders. And speaking of abilities, this little spike replacement has a better solution for getting the abilities on the gear you want. It's not perfect, and it's not good, but it's not as bad as leaving your chances of getting the abilities you want up to RNG. If you clean the abilities off your gear, you get ability chunks, which you can exchange to fill up slots in your gear. As for single player, your goal is roughly the same as the original, with the same setup, same structure, same enemies, the only differences being the main characters you work with are different. Oh wait. Since Marie is Agent 2, then there really isn't much of a difference after all. As of right now, the most noticeable differences between this game and the original is the special weapons used in turf wars and ranked battles and league battles. The Inkjet is a more fun version of the Inkzooka, the Stingray is a store-brand killer whale, the Baller is a knockoff Kraken, Inkstorms are rebranded Ink Strikes, and the list goes on. The only special weapon that remained intact was the Bomb Rush, which to me doesn't really need to be changed. There are some other things that set it apart from the original though. For one, local multiplayer is a thing in this game, which is really necessary considering the Switch's capabilities and the desire to capitalize on the handheld side of the Switch. Also, Salmon Run is this game's take on Call of Duty's Zombies mode. I think. Your goal here is to cooperate with your teammates to take out hordes of salmon that really need orthodontists more than George Washington, and deliver the golden eggs you obtain from defeating boss salmonoids to a basket on the map. You get bonuses such as food tickets, money, and even gear from Mr. Grizz. And really, it is amazing what kind of work one can accomplish when they work together. Despite your hard work, you never are told what Mr. Grizz needs those golden eggs for. Okay, headcanon time. Mr. Grizz needs those golden eggs because they give him pleasure. He shoves them up his ass, and when they disintegrate in his ass, that's when the orgasm kicks in. However, they don't last long, which is why he has such a high demand for them. But as I say that, with all the good things this game has going for it, and don't get me wrong, this game is fun and addicting, but as with all the good things in Splatoon 2, the bad stuff carried over from the original as well. As I've said before, whenever you boot up the game, you have no choice but to sit through Pearl and Marina's stage showcases, and while it's not terrible, it does get irritating. Can't say that I really enjoy how the matchmaking system for Splatfests were handled. As I write this, the Flight vs Invisibility Splatfest is ongoing, and while this one hasn't pitted me against my own teammates, the Ketchup vs Mayonnaise Splatfest had me fighting my own Ketchup teammates versus fighting the Mayonnaise players. I've arguably had more victories over my Ketchup brethren than turf wars against the Mayonnaise people. You can fuck off is what I'm trying to say. Quick side note, Mayonnaise won that Splatfest, but Mayonnaise tastes like pasteurized Eevee semen that was triple distilled in juice boxes. When you confront Merch to work on your abilities, whether you get your abilities scrubbed or if you re-roll them, you have a better method to get your abilities you want. But it's still more of a chore versus a task. Chargers have their precision given away with a bright light shining from their weapon whenever they're fully charged, which is okay, but I use chargers most often. Roller and charger users, ones without scopes, have a new method for attacking and splatting their foes. I don't get that much benefit from that considering that I'm way too attached to using the splatter scope as of the time of writing the script, but the rollers— oh, screw you guys! Also, despite the salmon run being as good as it is, you don't have a choice on which weapons you use at any given wave of salmonoids, which means you can get stuck with using a roller and performing miserably with— oh, come on! The splashdown has hitbox issues, especially when a roller user triggers a special— oh, for fuck's sake!
It doesn't matter who I am. All that matters is that any inkling out there who uses rollers is despicable. They are a disgrace, and we shall deal with them accordingly. If you are an inkling that uses rollers, just remember, we will fight you, we will follow you, and nobody will hear from you ever again. Oh, is that how you use this thing? Huh. Guess I should read the manual more often. You have been warned.
This game really is very similar to the prequel, complete with all the blessings and flaws, and while some things have been polished, it seems too similar to the original to warrant a sequel. And while I do believe that the game is fun and overall worthy of critical praise, it still feels like a reskin. For reference, we can take a look at similar games that did the same thing. We can look at the differences between Paper Mario and Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door. Paper Mario was pretty good when it first came out, and I still think it holds up to this day. The Thousand Year Door, while it had an adventure and maps of its own, had the same battle mechanics, albeit polished with things like counterattacks and more varied action commands. There were a lot of returning features such as badges, party member upgrades, upgradable gear, and new ways to explore the world of the Thousand Year Door. In that sense, the Thousand Year Door was good. Perhaps not everyone thinks the same way about it, but many Paper Mario enthusiasts consider the Thousand Year Door the best of the series, myself included, and is a game that I consider one of the best ever made. But when Super Paper Mario came out, it was a platformer versus an RPG, and while Super Paper Mario had arguably the best story of the series, it wasn't as liked amongst the Paper Mario enthusiasts. For a prequel-sequel comparison where the sequel didn't hold up, we can take a look at Borderlands 2 and Borderlands the pre-sequel. Borderlands 2 was a good game as well as addicting to play due to the diversity of weapons, shields, class mods, relics, challenging gameplay at times, skill trees, and loot hunting. But while the pre-sequel took place on Pandora's moon, had mechanics like jump boosting, low gravity, weapon combining, and even delved into Handsome Jack's backstory, it was made on the same engine, had the same traits, and left some of the good things out from its predecessor. And sure, the playable characters weren't recycled to be used in the pre-sequel, but most of the side quests felt more like item fetching versus quests. Even some of the story missions were teeth-grindingly tedious and felt like drags. In this sense, the pre-sequel was just so-so. It wasn't terrible if you ask me, but it just wasn't as fun to play as Borderlands 2. And if we really want to come full circle with prequel-sequel comparisons, we can take a look at the games produced by Shovelware Ambassador's Digital Homicide. For those who don't know what Digital Homicide is, they were indie developers on Steam responsible for publishing awful titles with assets bought from the Unity store without modifying them or putting them into good use. The most notable example we will compare is Temper Tantrum, which is an irony, so thick Alanis Morissette will be jealous. And if you want to avoid getting motion sickness, then you may want to avert your eyes for the next few seconds. Temper Tantrum had serious camera issues that made players sick, awful physics, bad music. Bottom line, you'd have to pay me a pretty penny to play that game. Digital Homicide also tried to push Temper Tantrum 2 onto Steam through the now non-existent Greenlight program. And judging by the trailer, Temper Tantrum 2 was a direct reskin of the prior game, the differences being that the clothed model of generic cute male was used, and the levels were city-themed versus the cartoony eyesores in the original. Everything else remained the same, however. Now, I don't know for sure if Temper Tantrum 2 was ever published onto Steam, but I'm sure that we can all agree when I say that Temper Tantrum 2 would never have worked. The reason being that the original Temper Tantrum was horrendous, devoid of any kind of imagination or entertainment. FYI, Temper Tantrum wasn't the only reskins they tried to pass off as sequels, but I digress. So where does this leave Splatoon 2, a game that carries most of the pros and cons from the original? Well, here's my verdict. While the game is still fun to play, I cannot appreciate how it feels too much like the original. So I'll just leave it at that. And now for the final score.